Fuck. That's the first word that forms in my mind. Not a thought, but a feeling. I try to take a deep breath, but the air is wrong. It smells clean, too clean, like expensive linen and a man's cologne. Something woody and sharp. It's not the familiar, comforting scent of my own messy apartment, of my roommate Chloe's lavender laundry detergent, and the faint smell of burnt toast from yesterday's breakfast. This is not my bed. My eyes are still closed, but I can feel it. The sheets are too smooth, the thread count too high. My body aches in places I don't want to remember. A deep, bruising soreness that speaks of a night I've already tried to forget. I shift, just an inch, and my bare leg brushes against another. Warm, hairy, solidly masculine. My eyes fly open, and for a second, the world is just a blur of white sheets and that blinding slash of light. Then it focuses. It's a man's back, broad, muscular, with the kind of definition you see on gym posters. My hand, the one I can't feel, is resting on his side. I snatch it back like I've been burned. Who? God. Who? The party. The company party. Too many shots of tequila, laughter, a blur of faces, and then nothing. A black hole where my memory should be. I need to get out. Now. Before he wakes up, slowly, carefully, I begin to peel myself away from him, lifting my body from the mattress with the agonizing slowness of a bomb disposal expert. The sheet pools around my waist, revealing a landscape of skin that doesn't feel like my own. My clothes are a scattered trail on the plush gray carpet, a bra hooked on a chair, my dress a silk puddle by the floor-to-ceiling window. I manage to get to the edge of the bed, my feet touching the cold floor. I'm almost free. I just need to gather my things and disappear, become a ghost. A bad dream he might vaguely remember. And then, he stirs. He rolls over onto his back with a soft groan, throwing an arm across his face to block out the light. And my heart doesn't just stop. It shatters. It's him, Steven, my new boss, the new director of finance, barely a month into the job, the one everyone whispers about, brilliant, ruthless, and at least 5 years younger than me. I'm naked, in a hotel room, in bed with my boss. The cold reality of it washes over me, and for a wild second, I think I'm going to be sick right here on the expensive carpet. His breathing is deep and even. He's still completely out. Move, Autumn, move. My movements are robotic, driven by a primal need to flee. I snatch my dress from the floor, the silk cool against my frantic, clammy skin. I find my underwear, my bra. Each rustle of fabric sounds like a gunshot in the silent room. I dress in a desperate hurry, fumbling with the zipper on the back of my dress, my fingers refusing to cooperate. I can't leave like this, just slinking away like what? A one-night stand? It feels dirtier than that. This was a colossal, career-ending mistake. My eyes land on my purse, sitting on the desk by the TV. An idea, cold and sharp and born of pure panic, slices through my hungover brain. I tiptoe over, open the clasp, and pull out my wallet. My hands are shaking as I take out 2 crisp, new $100 bills. With a deep breath, I walk back to the bed. I place the bills on the polished wood of the nightstand, right next to his sleek, expensive-looking phone. I don't know what message I'm trying to send. Maybe it's an insult. Maybe it's a payment. Maybe it's just a way to put a final, ugly period on a sentence I wish had never been written. Then I turn, grab my purse and my heels, and I don't just walk out. I flee. The ride back to my apartment is a blur. The rising sun feels like an accusation. When I finally slide my key into the lock, The familiar click is the first comforting sound I've heard all morning. Inside, the apartment is quiet. Chloe is still fast asleep in her room, a tangled mess of blankets and blonde hair. I can hear her soft, rhythmic breathing from the hallway. Slowly, quietly, I make my way to my own room, intending to just crawl under the covers and pretend the last 12 hours never happened. As I pass her open door, a voice, thick with sleep, mumbles from her bed. "You're such an asshole. I'm gonna make you pay." My blood runs cold. I freeze, my back pressed against the wall. Did she hear me? Does she know? But then she rolls over, smacking her lips, her hands flailing uselessly at an imaginary enemy. She's dreaming, just dreaming. The relief is so intense it makes my knees weak. I finally make it to my bed and lie down. But sleep is impossible. The fear of oversleeping, of having to face him at the office, is a shot of pure adrenaline. I can't do this. I have to act normal. I throw my comforter off with a loud, theatrical sigh, as if I'm just waking up. I swing my legs out of bed and walk over to my closet, making just enough noise for a sleeping person to potentially register. In the bathroom, I avoid my own reflection, turning on the shower until the water is steaming. But you can only avoid yourself for so long. As I stand in front of the mirror, the steam swirling around me, I see it. Just below my jawline, on the pale skin of my neck, is a dark, ugly blossom of a bruise. A hickey. My whole body is a symphony of aches. I close my eyes, and the memories I've been suppressing try to bubble to the surface. Me, laughing too loudly, his hand on my back, the dizzying feeling of being led out of the crowded bar. How could I have been so stupid? And with him, of all people, a kid. I shake my head, trying to dislodge the thoughts, and splash cold water on my face. My name is Autumn. I'm 30 years old, an accountant. At my age, I should have a husband, maybe a kid, a mortgage. Instead, I have a roommate and a heart that's been in a coma for the last 5 years. Ever since I lost Ethan, my first love, my only love. He didn't just leave me. He left the world, and he took my ability to feel anything for anyone else with him. My parents, of course, don't see it that way. My mom is always trying to set me up, convinced that all I need is a nice, stable man to fix me. He's a doctor, Autumn. His mother is in my book club. I've learned the only way to deal with it is to go to the awkward dinners, smile politely, and then shut it down so brutally and efficiently that they never call again. My parents have mostly given up now. They just look at me with that sad, disappointed resignation. I dry my face and get dressed, pulling a dark turtleneck from my closet. Armor. When I step out of my room, Chloe is still a lump under her covers. I walk over and pull the blanket off her. Rise and shine, sleeping beauty. The sun's practically setting. I poke her shoulder. Get up. You look like a monster when you sleep. She groans, slowly sitting up and rubbing her eyes. Her voice is a gravelly whisper. You're back? When the hell did you get in? I didn't hear you. I force a casual smile, trying to keep my voice light. Last night, you were completely passed out. A burglar could have cleaned out the entire apartment and you wouldn't have stirred. She squints at me, suddenly more awake, more suspicious. 'Cause I'm pretty sure I was up until after midnight, and you definitely weren't here. I thought you said it was just a company party. Why so late? The questions feel like little jabs. Oh, you know, I say, waving a dismissive hand as I walk towards the kitchen. It was festive. The booze was flowing. I stayed later than I planned. Now get up. I'm starving. I have a mountain of work today. Chloe finally swings her legs out of bed and stumbles towards the bathroom, yawning. You go on ahead. My start time is more of a suggestion. Hey, are you gonna be home for dinner? I was thinking of hitting the farmer's market. Then she stops, her eyes narrowing on my neck. Wait a sec. Why are you wearing a turtleneck? It's going to be like 80 degrees today. Aren't you gonna be hot? My heart hammers against my ribs. No, I feel a little chilly, actually. Must be coming down with something. I grab my purse from the counter, desperate to escape. Anyway, I'm heading out. I'll try to be home early, okay? I'm out the door before she can ask another question. The lie hanging in the air behind me like a bad smell. As I walk to the subway, the scratchy wool of the turtleneck feels like it's choking me. The office building lobby is a vast, echoing chamber of polished marble and cold, recycled air. It's a place designed to make you feel small, insignificant. This morning, it's working. Every click of my heels against the floor feels like a confession. I join the herd of employees waiting for the elevator bank. Keeping my head down, my eyes fixed on the scuffed toes of my shoes. Just another anonymous drone in the corporate machine. That's all I want to be today. Invisible. Then, through the glass doors, I see him. Steven. He strides into the lobby like he owns it. His suit a sharp, dark gray that probably cost more than my rent. His hair is perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven. He looks crisp, focused, and utterly unaffected by whatever happened last night. He looks like a boss, panic, cold and sharp, seizes me. I can't face him. Not now. Not like this. Ding. An elevator arrives. The silver doors slide open, and the crowd surges forward. I use the momentum, letting myself be carried with them. Pushing my way toward the back corner, I turn my body away, facing the wall, making myself as small as possible, praying the turtleneck is enough of a disguise. He steps in just as the doors are closing. I can smell his cologne, that same woody, expensive scent from the hotel room. It's suffocating. My stomach churns. The elevator is packed, a claustrophobic box of bodies, and the smell of stale coffee and morning perfume. The silence is deafening. Each floor that chimes past is a tick on a time bomb. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. The doors slide open on the 14th floor. My floor. I don't wait for a polite exit. I squeeze through the crowd, my shoulder bumping against someone, a muttered excuse me lost in my haste. I practically run out, not daring to look back, and beeline for the accounting department. I don't stop until I reach the safety of my cubicle. I collapse into my chair, the cheap foam sighing under my weight. I drop my purse on the floor and bury my face in my hands, my whole body trembling. I made it. He didn't see me, but the relief is temporary, washed away by a fresh wave of shame. The $200. What was I thinking? It was a desperate, stupid move, but in that moment, it was the only thing I could think of to create a separation, to turn what happened into a transaction instead of something else, something more humiliating. And what did he lose in all this? Nothing. A man like him? This is just another notch on his bedpost. I'm the one who loses. I'm the one with everything at stake. My job, my reputation. I just have to pray he was too drunk to remember. That he woke up, saw the cash, and just assumed he'd hired an escort in a blackout. Please God, let him not remember my face. Let me just be a nameless, faceless mistake. I swear, I will never, ever be that reckless again. Meanwhile, across town, in a suite at the Grand Hyatt, Steven was waking up. He rubbed his temples, a low groan escaping his lips. He sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. And that's when he saw it. On the nightstand, next to his phone, were two $100 bills, neatly folded, He stared at them for a long moment, his brow furrowed in confusion, and then the memories, fragmented and hazy, began to surface. The party, too much whiskey, the decision to get a room instead of driving home, stepping out of the bathroom and seeing a woman stumbling in the hallway, looking lost. She was beautiful, even in her intoxicated state. He'd tried to help her, asked if she was okay. She just laughed, leaned into him, her hands grabbing the lapels of his jacket, pulling him close. And after that, a blur of skin and heat and the scent of her perfume. He'd lost control, and Stephen hated losing control. Now, sitting in the harsh morning light, another memory surfaced. The elevator. This morning, a woman in a dark turtleneck, her face hidden, rushing out of the car. It was her. He was sure of it, and she'd left him money, like he was a prostitute. The confusion curdled into a cold, hard anger. Did she really have the audacity to think she could buy his silence? Or worse, that he was for hire? A little while later, he was sitting behind his enormous desk on the 20th floor. His office, a minimalist landscape of glass and steel overlooking the city. He pressed a button on his intercom. "Leo, come in here." A moment later, his young, perpetually nervous assistant scurried in, tablet in hand. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Stephen's voice was dangerously quiet. "I need you to run a background check. The woman who came back to my hotel room with me last night. You have 30 minutes. Leo paled slightly, but he nodded, his professionalism overriding his shock. Stephen glanced up, his eyes narrowed. "But sir, I don't." "She works here." Stephen cut him off. "I saw her in the elevator this morning." He described the dark hair, the frantic escape. Leo swallowed hard and quickly left the room without another word. Alone again, Stephen picked up a heavy, silver pen and began to spin it between his fingers, the rhythmic motion doing nothing to calm the irritation churning inside him. His gaze drifted out the window, but he wasn't seeing the city below. He was seeing a dusty playground from 20 years ago. He was a skinny, awkward kid, cornered by 3 older boys. He remembered the sting of gravel on his knees, the fear coiling in his stomach. And then, a girl with fierce eyes and a scraped knee, who had charged in like a tiny warrior, swinging a stick and yelling at them to leave him alone. She was carefree, fearless. He'd never forgotten her. He had moved away not long after, but he'd made a promise to himself. A promise that he would find her again. He'd taken this job, moved to this city, not just for the career advancement, but for the chance to finally keep that promise. The intercom buzzed, startling him out of his reverie. Leo was back. He had the information. Leo entered the office, his footsteps barely making a sound on the plush carpet. He held out the tablet, his expression carefully neutral. "Sir, I have the information you requested." Stephen took it, his eyes scanning the screen. A personnel file. Name, Autumn Pham. Department, Accounting. He swiped through the photos, the employment history, the personal details, and then he saw it. Her hometown. The same small, forgotten town he'd spent that one miserable summer in with his grandparents. The same town where he'd been bullied, and where she had saved him. It was her. The fierce little girl from the playground was the woman from last night, the woman who thought he was a gigolo. Leo cleared his throat, a nervous little sound. "Sir, if you're worried about this getting out, I can have a conversation with her, or I can speak with HR. We could terminate her employment to protect your reputation." "Of course." Stephen looked up from the tablet, his gaze so cold and intense that Leo flinched. He gestured dismissively with his hand. "Get out." Leo didn't need to be told twice. He practically evaporated from the room. Stephen leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking in protest. He looked at her picture again. It was her face, but older, harder. The carefree light he remembered in her eyes was gone, replaced by something guarded, wounded. He tapped on her contact information, her phone number displayed in bold, black digits. Back in the sterile beige world of the accounting department, I was trying to lose myself in a spreadsheet. Numbers were safe. Numbers were logical. They didn't get drunk and sleep with their boss. My phone buzzed on my desk. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Probably another one of my mother's matchmaking attempts. Feeding my number to some poor, unsuspecting bachelor. I silenced the call. A familiar flicker of annoyance passing through me. Let them leave a voicemail I'll never listen to. I tried to focus on the column of figures in front of me, but the numbers were swimming. The phone buzzed again. Same number. God, this person is relentless. I muttered under my breath, my voice a low growl. Take a hint. Psycho. I didn't just silence it this time. I mashed the power button on the side of my phone, holding it down until the screen went black. There. Problem solved. I dropped it into my desk drawer and went back to work. The forced concentration, a fragile shield against the chaos, churning inside me. On the 20th floor, Stephen stared at his phone, a muscle twitching in his jaw. The call had gone straight to voicemail. He'd never had to call anyone twice in his life. He was Stephen Sterling. People answered when he called. And this woman had just hung up on him. Twice. Then turned her phone off. The anger was back, sharp and hot. He slammed his palm on the intercom button again. Leo. His assistant appeared in the doorway, looking even more terrified than before. Sir, is there another problem? Get me the woman from accounting. Now. Which woman, sir? There are several. Stephen's patience snapped. He slapped the flat of his hand on the desk, the sound echoing through the silent office. He held up the tablet, her face glowing on the screen. This woman. Got it. Go. Leo scrambled away like a frightened rabbit. A few minutes later, he appeared at the entrance to our department. Autumn, fam? His voice was a nervous squeak. Mr. Sterling wants to see you. Every head in the department popped up over the cubicle walls like prairie dogs. My stomach plummeted. I looked up, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was it. The moment of reckoning. He knew. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes on me as I stood up, my legs feeling like they were made of jelly. What did he want? Was he going to fire me? Blackmail me? I walked behind Leo, my sweat-drenched palms leaving damp prints on my black skirt. I could feel the whispers starting behind me before I even cleared the room. The elevator ride up to the 20th floor was the longest ride of my life. Each floor we passed was another step towards the gallows. Leo led me to a pair of massive frosted glass doors. He's inside, Leo whispered, then scurried back to his desk as if the office itself was on fire. I stood there for a long moment, my hand hovering over the handle, my reflection a distorted, terrified ghost in the glass. I took a deep, shaky breath and knocked. Come in. His voice was a low rumble from the other side of the door. Cold, authoritative. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was huge, sterile, and intimidating. He was standing by the window, his back to me, looking out at the city skyline. He didn't turn around. He didn't acknowledge me. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with unspoken accusations. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. My voice came out as a strained whisper. You wanted to see me, sir. He still didn't move. The silence continued to press down on me, suffocating me. "Sir, if this is about something, I have a lot of work to get back to." Finally, he turned. He looked at me, his eyes scanning my face, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than anger in his expression. It looked familiar, but then it was gone, replaced by that same cold, unreadable mask. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused?" His voice was low, cutting. He walked slowly from the window, circling his desk like a predator. He poured a glass of water from a crystal carafe and then moved to one of the low leather couches that faced the window. He sat down, crossing one leg over the other, the picture of calm control. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice still trembling. He took a slow sip of water before answering. "Let's talk about last night," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "Care to explain why you were in my hotel room?" I knew this was coming. I had rehearsed 1,000 different lies, 1,000 different excuses. But now, standing here, under his intense gaze, my mind was a blank slate. I don't know," I stammered, the truth feeling pathetic and weak. "I had too much to drink. It was a mistake." "A mistake," he repeated, the words dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you call it? And the money you left on my nightstand, was that a mistake too?" He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "Or do you think I'm some kind of male escort, Ms. Pham?" The question hung in the air between us, sharp and glittering and deadly. My face burned with a shame so hot it felt like my skin was peeling away. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. I just stood there, mute, as the silence in the room became a physical presence, pressing in on me from all sides. He watched my silent humiliation, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke again, his voice softer now, but no less cutting. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, climbing into my bed like that. What was your end game, Autumn? Were you planning to blackmail me, threaten to go to HR, tell everyone in the office that the new boss took advantage of you?" He paused, letting the ugly accusations sink in. "But before you do, you should take this." He reached into the pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a small, white pill. He held it out to me between his thumb and forefinger. "I have no interest in having a bastard child running around. Take it." That was it. That was the spark that finally ignited the anger simmering beneath my fear and shame. The sheer arrogance of him. The assumption that I was some kind of scheming gold digger. My head snapped up, and for the first time, I looked him directly in the eye. "Don't worry, sir," I spat, the word dripping with all the contempt I could muster. "You don't have to worry about me trying to pin anything on you. As far as I'm concerned, last night was a mistake, an accident, and if you think for 1 second that I climbed into your bed for money, or for some pathetic attempt at blackmail, then you're even more of an arrogant prick than everyone in the office says you are." I was shaking, but my voice was steady. "I won't tell a soul about this. You have my word. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a job to do." I turned on my heel and marched towards the door. "Stop." His voice was a sharp command. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. I turned back to face him, my jaw clenched. "What now? You forgot this." He gestured to the desk. The 2 $100 bills were sitting there, a stark white accusation against the dark wood. My face flushed a deeper shade of crimson. I walked back to the desk, snatched the money, and shoved it into my pocket without a word. The humiliation was a physical taste in my mouth, bitter and metallic. "Anything else?" I asked, my voice tight. He just stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. I turned and walked out, pulling the heavy glass door shut behind me, the soft click echoing the finality of my ruined career. Back at my desk, I couldn't focus. The numbers on the screen blurred into a meaningless jumble. All I could see was the condescending look on his face, the pill held out in his hand. I have no interest in a bastard child. The words echoed in my head, each repetition a fresh stab of humiliation. What had I done last night? The memories were still a frustrating fog. I remembered the party winding down, the music fading. I was dizzy, drunk, and just wanted to find a quiet place to sit down. I remembered wandering down a hallway, opening a door to what I thought was an empty conference room, and then seeing a bed. A soft, inviting bed. I must have just collapsed onto it. And after that, nothing. Just a black, empty void until I woke up next to him. But his words, "Take this." He was right. As much as I hated him, he was right. I couldn't risk it. I grabbed my purse and practically ran out of the office, ignoring the curious stares of my coworkers. I went to the nearest pharmacy, my hands shaking as I paid for the little white box. Back in the office bathroom, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the fluorescent lights making my skin look sallow and sick. I popped the pill out of its foil packet and swallowed it dry, the bitter taste a perfect match for the bitterness in my soul. I would not let this happen again. Never. That evening, when I got back to the apartment, the smell of garlic and roasting chicken filled the air. Chloe was home, and from the sight of a pair of men's size 11 sneakers by the door, so was her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Mark. I wasn't surprised. Chloe was like that. One minute she was screaming at him over the phone. The next they were playing Happy Family in our tiny kitchen. I walked in to find them exactly where I expected, wrapped around each other by the stove, stirring a pot of something that smelled delicious. The picture of domestic bliss. It made my stomach turn. "Hey, stranger," Chloe chirped, pulling away from Mark just enough to grin at me. "Look who's back. I thought you were working late again." "Hi, Autumn," Mark said, giving me a friendly, slightly goofy smile. "Hey guys," I said, forcing a smile of my own. "Just another day at the office. Smells good in here." "Yeah, well, we're celebrating," Chloe announced, her eyes sparkling. "You're just in time. Go wash up. Dinner's almost ready." "Okay, be right out," I mumbled, escaping to my room. As I closed the door, I remembered Chloe's dream from that morning, her sleepy, angry words. "You're such an asshole. I'm gonna make you pay." It was almost funny, seeing her now, so completely besotted with the very guy she'd been verbally eviscerating in her sleep. Love. It made people crazy. I changed out of my work clothes and went to wash my hands. My phone was on the charger, and I saw a notification from my mom. I picked it up and called her back. "Hi, Mom. Autumn. You're finally calling me back. Did you get my texts? You've been so busy lately." I was starting to worry. "I'm fine, Mom. Just swamped at work. Year-end reports." It was a lie, but it was an easy one. "Well, you need to make time for your family. You don't live in your own little world, you know. I need you to come home this weekend. We have a favor to ask." I sighed. "Here it comes. Is this another blind date, Mom? Because I told you." "Oh, for heaven's sake. Not everything is about finding you a husband. Honestly, Autumn, I'm getting tired of your attitude. Just come home. We need you to go to a wedding for us." This was new. A wedding? Who's getting married? "It's your father's old business partner's son, down in San Diego. We already RSVP'd, but your grandmother isn't feeling well, and we have to go visit her this weekend. We can't just not show up. It would be rude. Your sister, Amelia, is too young to go by herself, so you have to go. It's your duty as the older daughter." It was a trap, and I had walked right into it. But arguing was pointless. "Fine, Mom, I'll go. What time is the wedding?" "It's Saturday afternoon. I'll text you the details." Now, Are you eating properly? You sound tired. I'm fine, Mom. I have to go. Dinner's ready. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up, feeling exhausted. I walked back out to the living room, where the table was set, and the three of us sat down to eat. So, Chloe said, her fork poised over a piece of chicken. Guess what? Mark and I are going away for the weekend. A little romantic getaway. Oh, that's nice, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. Where are you guys going? It's a surprise, Mark chimed in, winking at Chloe. So, you'll have the whole place to yourself, Chloe continued. Party time. I just smiled and shook my head. Actually, I have to go out of town myself. A wedding in San Diego. Ooh, fancy, Chloe said. Anyone we know? No. Just a family obligation. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The only sounds the clinking of our forks against the plates. Then Chloe looked at me, a thoughtful expression on her face. You know, Autumn, she said, her voice suddenly serious. I've been thinking. It's been 5 years since Ethan. Don't you think it's time you started, living again? The mention of his name was like a punch to the gut. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Chloe, don't. No, I'm serious. You can't just shut yourself off from the world forever. Ethan wouldn't have wanted that. He would have wanted you to be happy. You don't know what he would have wanted, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I know he loved you, she said softly, and I know he wouldn't want you to be alone for the rest of your life. You deserve to be happy, Autumn. You really do. I put my fork down, my appetite gone. I know, I whispered. I know you're right. It's hard. We finished the rest of the meal in a strained silence. Later, after Mark had left and Chloe was in the shower, I found myself scrolling through Facebook, a mindless habit to numb the pain. I saw a notification from a name I didn't recognize, but we had a few mutual friends. We'd been messaging back and forth for a few weeks, just casual, anonymous conversation. He was smart, funny, and we seemed to connect on a level that I hadn't with anyone since Ethan. We'd never seen each other's faces, never even exchanged real names. It was safe. His profile picture was a silhouette against a sunset. His status was active. I typed out a message. Hey, you up? A moment later, 3 little dots appeared. He was typing back. Just finished dinner. What's up? You're online late. I smiled. A small, genuine smile. It was easy with him. No pressure, no history. Couldn't sleep. Long day. Oh yeah. What's going on? I hesitated. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to unload the whole sordid, humiliating story. But he was a man, and the thought of explaining what happened with Steven made my skin crawl. So I deflected. Just work stuff. We got a new director in my department. He's difficult, I typed, the understatement of the century. Younger than me, but he acts like he's the king of the world. Total power trip. One of those, he typed back. The worst. Just do your job and stay off his radar. That's my advice. If only he knew. I was so far on his radar, I was the flashing red dot in the center of the screen. We chatted for another hour, about everything and nothing. Movies we'd seen, books we were reading, the general absurdity of life. It was a relief, a small island of normalcy in a sea of chaos. Finally, he typed, gotta run. Early meeting tomorrow. Talk soon? Definitely, I replied. Good night. I put my phone down and rolled over, a strange sense of peace settling over me. For the first time all day, I didn't feel completely alone. The next morning at the office was tense. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. convinced that they could all see the scarlet letter branded on my forehead. I saw Stephen stride past my cubicle on his way to a meeting, his face a mask of cold indifference. He didn't even glance in my direction. It was as if I didn't exist. Part of me was relieved, but another, smaller part, felt a strange sting of something. I didn't know what to call it. The week crawled by, each day a new exercise in anxiety. I lived in fear of another summons to his office, another confrontation, but nothing happened. He ignored me completely. It was a fragile, nerve-wracking truce, but it was better than open warfare. Saturday morning arrived, gray and drizzly. I packed an overnight bag, my resentment for this forced wedding trip a sour taste in my mouth. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay in my apartment, order takeout, and binge-watch a historical drama. But a promise was a promise. The drive down to San Diego was long and tedious. The traffic was brutal. By the time I finally pulled up to the waterfront hotel where the reception was being held, I was exhausted and cranky. I checked in, changed into the dress my mother had insisted I buy, and made my way to the ballroom. The room was a glittering explosion of white flowers and fairy lights. A string quartet was playing softly in the corner. It was all very beautiful and very not me. I found my parents' friends, a nice but boring couple named John and Mary, and delivered my mother's apologies and their wedding gift. They seated me at a table filled with other solo guests, a collection of distant cousins and awkward plus ones. I nursed a glass of champagne, feeling deeply, profoundly out of place. I didn't know a soul. I made polite, meaningless small talk with the woman next to me, a dental hygienist from Irvine, but my heart wasn't in it. I just wanted the night to be over. Then I heard a voice, a familiar voice. Well, look what the cat dragged in. I turned, and my heart did a frantic, painful flip-flop in my chest. It was Stephen. He was standing there, looking impossibly handsome in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He had a slight smirk on his face, an expression of amused surprise. Of all the gin joints, in all the towns, in all the world, he walks into this one. The universe had a sick, twisted sense of humor. I stared at him, my mouth agape, unable to form a coherent thought. He was the last person on earth I expected, or wanted, to see. What are you doing here? I finally managed to stammer. I could ask you the same thing, he said, his eyes twinkling with a light I'd never seen before. He pulled out the empty chair next to me and sat down, his presence immediately sucking all the air out of my personal space. My cousin is the groom. Of course. His cousin was the groom. It was just my luck. I wanted to run. I wanted to get up, walk out of this ridiculously opulent ballroom, and just keep walking until I hit the ocean. But I was trapped by social etiquette and the mortifying reality of our shared history. I turned away from him, pretending to be fascinated by the floral centerpiece. I would ignore him. If I didn't acknowledge him, maybe he would just disappear. But Stephen, it turned out, was not the disappearing type. The party wore on. Speeches were made. Toasts were given. The bride and groom had their first dance. I clapped politely at all the appropriate moments, my back ramrod straight, my entire being focused on not looking at the man sitting next to me. I could feel his eyes on me, though. It was a heavy, palpable presence, like the heat from a fire. Finally, the dinner plates were cleared, and the band started playing something upbeat. People started to drift towards the dance floor. This was my chance. I could make my escape. I picked up my purse and stood up. It was lovely meeting you all, I said to the table at large, a polite plastic smile plastered on my face. But I have an early drive tomorrow. so I should probably be heading out. I turned to leave, but Stephen was already on his feet, blocking my path. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. "Yes," I said, trying to sidestep him. "I'm very tired." He didn't move. "I'll give you a ride." "No, thank you," I said, my voice sharp. "I have my own car." "Don't be ridiculous, Autumn. You've had at least 3 glasses of champagne. You're not driving anywhere." He was right. Damn him. I was probably just over the legal limit. "I'll take a cab," I insisted. "It's late. There won't be any cabs around here. Just let me drive you. My hotel is on the way." I hesitated. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to say no, to run in the opposite direction. But I was tired and a little tipsy, and the thought of trying to find a cab in this part of town at this hour was daunting. "Fine," I said, the word clipped and resentful. "But I'm sitting in the back." He just smiled. A slow, infuriating smile that made me want to slap him. "Whatever you want." We said our goodbyes and walked out to the valet. His car was a sleek, black Audi, the kind of car that purrs instead of roars. The valet opened the passenger door for me, but I just shook my head and walked around to the back, pulling the door open myself and sliding in. Stephen just watched me, that same amused smirk on his face, before getting into the driver's seat. The ride was silent and excruciatingly awkward. I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. My arms crossed tightly over my chest. The tension in the car was so thick, you could have cut it with a knife. After what felt like an eternity, he pulled up in front of my hotel. "Here you go," he said, his voice neutral. "Thank you," I said, my hand already on the door handle, desperate to get out. I practically fell out of the car and hurried towards the hotel entrance without a backward glance. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing how much he affected me. I just wanted to get to my room, lock the door, and forget this whole night ever happened. I was standing on the curb, waiting for the light to change so I could cross the street to the hotel, when I heard the sound of screeching tires and a man's shout. "Hey, stop, thief." I turned just in time to see a young kid on a bike snatch the purse off a woman's shoulder and take off down the street. Without thinking, I dropped my own bag and took off after him. Adrenaline surged through me, a hot, cleansing fire that burned away the champagne haze and the lingering humiliation of the night. My heels were a ridiculous impediment on the pavement, but I ran, fueled by a righteous, uncomplicated anger. This was something I could understand. A clear-cut case of right and wrong. The kid was fast, weaving through the late-night pedestrians, but I was faster. Years of morning jogs and pent-up frustration gave my legs a power I didn't know they possessed. I pumped my arms, my lungs burning, my eyes locked on the bouncing strap of the stolen purse. "Get back here, you little punk," I yelled, my voice raw. I was gaining on him. I could hear his panicked breathing, the frantic whirring of the bike chain. At the next intersection, he glanced over his shoulder, his eyes wide with surprise to see a woman in a cocktail dress hot on his heels. That split second of distraction was all I needed. He wobbled, and I launched myself forward, tackling him off the bike and sending us both sprawling onto a patch of grass by the side of the road. We landed in a tangled heap of limbs and cheap polyester. The purse flew from his grasp, landing a few feet away. I scrambled on top of him, pinning him down with my knee, my breath coming in ragged gasps. He was just a kid, probably no older than 17, with terrified, pimply face. "You think you can just steal from people?" I panted, grabbing a fistful of his hoodie. "You think that's okay?" "Let me go," he cried, his voice cracking. "I didn't do anything." "Oh, really?" I said, gesturing with my head towards the purse. "Then, what's that?" I reached back, my hand searching for my phone to call the cops. That's when the tears started. Big, fat, crocodile tears rolling down his dirt-streaked cheeks. "Please," he sobbed, his bravado completely gone. "Please, miss, don't call the police. I'm desperate. My mom, she's sick. She needs her medicine. And my boss, he didn't pay me this week. I swear, I've never done anything like this before. Please, I'll do anything. Just don't call the cops. If my mom finds out." I stared at him, my anger slowly beginning to recede, replaced by a weary, familiar pity. Was he lying? Probably. But the desperation in his eyes, the genuine terror in his voice, it felt real. I saw in him a reflection of all the people I'd ever known who were just one bad break away from doing something stupid. I let go of his shirt and sighed, a long, shaky exhale. "Get up," I said, my voice rough. "Just get up." He scrambled to his feet, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, looking at me with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Look, kid," I said, my voice softer now. "This isn't the way. Stealing from people, it's not a solution. It just makes things worse. What if you'd been caught? What would that do to your sick mother?" He just stared at the ground, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I walked over and picked up the stolen purse, then my own. I opened my wallet, pulled out the $200 bills that Stephen had returned to me, and held them out to the kid. "Here," I said, "take this. Go buy your mom's medicine and find another way, a better way. Because next time, you might not be so lucky. You might run into someone who isn't as understanding as I am." He looked at the money, then back at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. I can't," he stammered. "Just take it," I said, pressing the bills into his hand. "And don't let me see you doing this again. Ever. Now go home to your mom." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. A single, jerky movement. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Then he turned, grabbed his bike, and disappeared into the darkness. I stood there for a moment, my heart still pounding, the adrenaline slowly starting to fade, leaving me feeling shaky and strangely empty. I had just given away my shame money. There was a certain poetic justice in that, I supposed. That was impressive. The voice came from behind me, and I jumped, spinning around. It was Stephen. He was leaning against a lamppost, his arms crossed over his chest, an unreadable expression on his face. The black Audi was parked at the curb a few feet away. You were here the whole time?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I wasn't about to let you chase a mugger by yourself," he said, his voice dry. "I was about to intervene, but it looked like you had it under control." He pushed himself off the lamppost and walked towards me. "You're a hell of a runner, and you've got a mean right hook. I took a self-defense class in college," I mumbled, feeling suddenly self-conscious. My dress was askew, there was grass in my hair, and I was pretty sure I had a run in my stocking, and a soft spot for sob stories. "Apparently," he added, his gaze searching my face. "You really think his mom is sick?" "Probably not," I admitted. "But what if she is?" He just shook his head, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "You're a strange woman, Autumn fam." We stood there in an awkward silence for a moment, the sounds of the city, a distant hum around us. "Well," I said, finally breaking the silence, I should get back to my hotel." "Yeah," he said. "Come on, I'll walk you across." He fell into step beside me as we waited for the crosswalk signal to change. The silence between us felt different now, less hostile, almost comfortable. "So, he said, as we started across the street. Why'd you do it? Do what? Let him go. Give him the money. After he tried to rob someone, I shrugged. I don't know. He was just a kid. A stupid, scared kid. Everyone deserves a second chance, I guess. We reached the other side, and he walked me all the way to the revolving glass doors of my hotel. Well, I said, turning to face him. Thanks for everything. Anytime, he said. Try not to get into any more fights on your way to your room. I managed a small smile. I'll do my best. I turned to go, but his voice stopped me. Autumn? I turned back. Be safe, he said, his voice quiet, his eyes for once completely serious. I just nodded, then turned and disappeared into the brightly lit lobby. My mind a tangled mess of confusion and a strange, unfamiliar warmth. The next morning, I woke up with a dull headache and the distinct feeling that I had dreamed the entire bizarre encounter. But the grass stains on my dress and the scrape on my knee were undeniable proof that it had all been real. I had chased down a mugger, given him my shame money, and had a strangely civil conversation with Stephen Sterling. The world had definitely tilted on its axis. The drive back to LA was a long, introspective one. I replayed the events of the previous night over and over in my head, trying to make sense of them. Stephen's presence at the wedding was a coincidence, a cruel twist of fate, but his behavior afterward, that was different. He hadn't been condescending or arrogant. He'd been protective, concerned. It was a side of him I hadn't seen, a side I didn't know what to do with. It was much easier when I could just hate him. Back at the office on Monday, the fragile truce between us seemed to have shifted. He still didn't seek me out, but I would catch his eye across the office sometimes, a brief, unreadable glance before he looked away. The open hostility was gone, replaced by a quiet, watchful tension. It was almost more unnerving. A few weeks later, the company announced its annual corporate retreat. This year, it was a 3-day trip to a resort in Napa Valley. Attendance was mandatory. My heart sank. 3 days. 3 days of forced team-building exercises, awkward happy hours, and worst of all, 3 days of being in close proximity to Stephen. There was no escape. The trip started, as all corporate trips do, with an early morning bus ride. I found a seat by the window and tried to lose myself in a podcast, but it was no use. The bus was buzzing with the forced cheerfulness of people who would rather be anywhere else. I saw Stephen get on, looking effortlessly cool, in a pair of jeans and a casual button-down shirt. He exuded an aura of calm authority that seemed to silence the chatter as he walked down the aisle. Our eyes met for a split second, and I quickly looked away, my heart doing a nervous little flutter. At the resort, we were assigned rooms. I was paired with Sarah, a bubbly, slightly ditzy girl from marketing. The room was beautiful, with a balcony overlooking the vineyards, but I couldn't appreciate it. All I could think about was the welcome dinner that night. As I was getting ready, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my anonymous Facebook friend. Hey you, how's it going? Stuck on a corporate retreat in Napa, I typed back. Pray for me. Haha, could be worse. At least there's wine. True. Small mercies. Guess what? I'm out of town this weekend too. My fingers froze over the keyboard. A strange, prickling sensation ran down my spine. Oh yeah? Where to? I typed, my heart suddenly beating a little faster. Napa, actually. Small world, huh? I stared at the screen, my mind racing. No, it couldn't be. It was a coincidence. Napa was a popular destination. Lots of companies had retreats here. It was just a weird, random coincidence. Wow, that's crazy, I typed back, trying to sound casual. What part of Napa are you in? The 3 little dots appeared, then disappeared. He didn't answer. A moment later, my phone died, the screen going black. I had forgotten to charge it. Cursing under my breath, I plugged it in and finished getting ready, a new layer of anxiety settling over me. The welcome dinner was held on a sprawling outdoor terrace under a canopy of stars and fairy lights. It was beautiful, but I was too on edge to notice. I scanned the crowd, my eyes searching for, I don't even know what, a man with a silhouette for a face. It was ridiculous. I ended up at a table with a few people from my department and, to my dismay, Stephen. He sat directly across from me, his presence a magnetic force that I was desperately trying to resist. He was engaged in a conversation with the head of sales, but I could feel his attention on me, a constant, low-level hum of awareness. The food was incredible, the wine was flowing, but I could barely eat. The conversation at the table was the usual corporate drivel, sales projections, market trends, the new Keurig machine in the break room. I tuned it all out, my mind still stuck on the strange text exchange. After dinner, most people migrated towards the fire pits, grabbing another glass of wine, their laughter echoing in the cool night air. I saw Stephen talking with a group of executives, a tall, stunningly beautiful woman hanging on his every word. She was laughing, her hand resting possessively on his arm. A sharp, unfamiliar pang of something went through me. Jealousy? No, that was absurd. I didn't care who he talked to. I needed to get away. I slipped away from the crowd and started walking along a dimly lit path that wound its way through the vineyards. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and grapes. It was quiet here, peaceful. I could finally breathe. I leaned against a wooden fence post, closing my eyes and tilting my head back to look at the stars. I had been so sure that I was incapable of feeling anything for anyone ever again. Ethan had been the love of my life. When he died, a part of me had died with him. For 5 years, I had been numb, a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. But now I was confused. This strange, complicated dance with Stephen, it was stirring things inside me. Things I had thought were long dead. Annoyance, yes. Anger, definitely. But also curiosity and a reluctant, terrifying spark of attraction. You'll catch a cold out here. The voice startled me, and my eyes snapped open. Stephen was standing a few feet away, a dark silhouette against the moonlit vines. The beautiful woman was nowhere in sight. I needed some air, I said, my voice barely a whisper. So did I, he said, walking over to stand beside me at the fence. We stood in silence for a long moment, not looking at each other, just staring out at the endless rows of grapevines. So, he said, finally breaking the silence, about that night in San Diego, my whole body tensed. What about it? I just wanted to say. I was impressed by my running skills, I asked, a hint of sarcasm in my voice. By your heart, he said, his voice quiet and serious. He turned to look at me, and in the dim light, his eyes were dark and intense. You saw a kid who was scared and stupid, and you chose to show him compassion instead of contempt. Not many people would have done that. I didn't know what to say. His words were so unexpected, so sincere. It was disarming. He just needed a break, I mumbled, looking down at my hands. We all do. Sometimes. Another silence fell between us, but this one was different. It was charged with unspoken things, with the weight of our shared history and the uncertainty of our future. I shivered, a sudden chill running through me. Before I could even react, Stephen was shrugging off his jacket, a soft, expensive-looking cashmere thing, and draping it over my shoulders. It was warm from his body, and it smelled faintly of him, that same woody, intoxicating scent. "You don't have to do that," I said, my voice shaky. "You were cold," he said, his voice a low rumble. "And I'm a gentleman." Sometimes, his fingers brushed against my neck as he adjusted the collar, a brief, feather-light touch that sent a jolt of electricity through my entire body. I looked up at him, and he was closer than I realized. So close I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. So close I could feel the warmth of his breath on my face. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, wild bird trapped in a cage. This was dangerous territory. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I had the terrifying feeling that if I wasn't careful, I was about to fall. The moment stretched, taut and shimmering, like a soap bubble about to burst. His gaze dropped from my eyes to my lips, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that he was going to kiss me. And the most terrifying part? I wanted him to. "Stephen, there you are." The voice, high-pitched and annoyingly cheerful, shattered the spell. The beautiful woman from the dinner party was walking towards us, her heels sinking slightly into the soft earth. She had a proprietary smile on her face, the kind of smile that staked a claim. "I was looking all over for you," she said, her voice a little breathless. She looped her arm through his, completely ignoring me. "The guys are starting a poker game in the lounge. You in?" Stephen didn't look at her. His eyes were still on me, his expression suddenly shuttered and unreadable again. He took a small step back, creating a chasm of space between us that felt miles wide. "Yeah, sure, Olivia," he said, his voice flat. "I'll be right there." Olivia. So that was her name. She gave me a quick, dismissive once-over, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. It was a look that said, "Whatever this is, it's over." I felt a hot flush of embarrassment creep up my neck. I was the other woman, the interruption. I quickly shrugged off his jacket and held it out to him, the cashmere suddenly feeling like it was burning my skin. "Here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Thanks. I should get back." He took the jacket without a word, his fingers brushing against mine for a fraction of a second. Then he turned and walked away with Olivia, her laughter tinkling in the cool night air. I stood there for a long moment, feeling like an idiot. What had I been thinking? That there was some kind of connection between us, that the man who had called me a schemer and offered me a morning-after pill was suddenly having a change of heart. He was my boss. He was arrogant and complicated, and probably sleeping with a woman named Olivia. And I was just me, the accountant who had made a stupid, drunken mistake. I turned and walked back to my room, the magic of the moonlit vineyard now feeling cheap and hollow. Sarah was already asleep, her soft snores filling the room. I crept in, changed in the dark, and slid into bed, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I felt humiliated, confused, and angry. Angry at him for the mixed signals, angry at Olivia for her perfect timing, but mostly angry at myself for being so stupidly, hopelessly vulnerable. The next day was a blur of excruciating team-building exercises. We did trust falls, built rafts out of cardboard and duct tape, and participated in a corporate scavenger hunt. I went through the motions, a polite, vacant smile plastered on my face, but my mind was elsewhere. I avoided Stephen, and he seemed to be avoiding me, too. I saw him a few times, always surrounded by a laughing, adoring entourage, with Olivia invariably by his side. They looked like a power couple, a perfect match of ambition and good looks. It made my stomach hurt. That afternoon, we had a few hours of free time before the final awards dinner. Sarah, my roommate, wanted to go to the spa. I just wanted to be alone. I told her I was going for a walk, grabbed a book, and found a quiet, secluded spot by the resort's enormous swimming pool. The sun was warm on my skin, and the chlorine-scented air was peaceful. I tried to read, but the words just swam in front of my eyes. My mind kept drifting back to the vineyard, to that brief, charged moment before Olivia had appeared. Had I imagined it? The softness in his eyes, the way he'd looked at me, or was I just projecting my own confused, lonely feelings onto him? Mind if I join you? The voice came from my right, and I looked up to see David, a kind, gentle man from the IT department. He was a widower, a single dad to a little girl named Mia. He was one of the few people at the office I considered a genuine friend. "Hey, David," I said, managing a real smile for the first time all day. "Of course. Pull up a lounger." He settled into the chair next to me, letting out a contented sigh. "This is the life, huh? Too bad we have to go back to reality tomorrow." "Don't remind me," I said with a groan. "I think if I have to do one more trust fall, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown." He laughed, a warm, easy sound. "Yeah, I hear you. Hey, Mia's been asking about you. She still talks about the time you helped her build that Lego castle in the break room." Mia was a sweet, precocious 6-year-old who had lost her mom a few years back. She sometimes came to the office with David when he had to work late, and I had a soft spot for her. She was a bright, resilient little girl who deserved the world. "Oh, I love that kid," I said, my heart warming at the thought of her. "How is she doing?" "She's good. A handful, as always. You know," he said, turning to look at me, his expression suddenly serious. "She really looks up to you. And so do I. I was wondering, when we get back, would you like to get a coffee sometime? With me and Mia?" It was the sweetest, most gentle invitation I had ever received. David was a good man, a kind man. He was everything Stephen wasn't. He was safe, but I felt nothing. No spark, no flutter, just a quiet, friendly affection. Before I could answer, another voice cut in, sharp and laced with an icy authority. "Autumn, I need to speak with you." I looked up, and my stomach dropped. It was Stephen. He was standing at the foot of my lounger, his arms crossed, his face a thunderous mask of disapproval. Olivia was standing a few feet behind him, looking smug. "Can't it wait?" I asked, my voice coming out colder than I intended. "I'm on my break." "No," he said, his voice flat. "It can't. It's a company matter." David, ever the gentleman, immediately stood up. "No problem," he said, giving me a kind, understanding smile. "We can talk later, Autumn. I'll see you at dinner." He gave Stephen a polite, slightly wary nod and walked away. The moment he was gone, Stephen's cold demeanor seemed to intensify. "What was that all about?" he demanded. "What was what all about?" I shot back, my own anger flaring. "I was having a conversation with a friend. You know, that thing that normal people do. He was asking you out," he stated, his jaw tight. "And so what if he was?" I challenged, standing up to face him. "That's none of your business. When it happens on a company retreat, it is my business," he said, his voice dangerously low. "We have policies against fraternization." "Oh, give me a break," I said, my voice rising. "You're standing here with your own associate," I said, gesturing towards Olivia, who was watching the exchange with undisguised glee. "Don't you dare lecture me about fraternization." A muscle twitched in Stephen's jaw. "Olivia is my cousin," he said, the words clipped. "And that's beside the point. I'm your boss, and I'm telling you to be careful." "Careful of what?" I asked, incredulous. "Of David? The nicest, most harmless man in the entire company. He's a single father, Autumn, he said, as if that explained everything. It's complicated. I just don't want to see you get hurt. You don't want to see me get hurt? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. I let out a short, bitter laugh. That's rich, coming from you. I grabbed my book and my towel and pushed past him, my shoulder deliberately bumping against his. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, my whole body trembling with a rage. So intense it felt like I was going to explode. That night, at the final awards dinner, the atmosphere was thick with a forced end-of-trip joviality. I sat in a fog of resentment, picking at a piece of dry chicken. The buzz of conversation around me, just a meaningless drone. I was seated as far away from Stephen as I could manage, but I could still feel his presence, a dark, brooding storm cloud on the other side of the ballroom. David, to his credit, acted as if the awkward scene at the pool had never happened. He was seated at my table and kept trying to draw me into a light-hearted conversation, his kindness a stark contrast to Stephen's possessive anger. I appreciated his effort, I really did, but my mind was a tangled knot of fury. Who the hell did he think he was, warning me away from David, as if he had any right to comment on my personal life? His hypocrisy was breathtaking. Cousin or not, he and Olivia were clearly more than just family, and his condescending, paternalistic concern for my well-being. It was the ultimate insult. After everything he'd put me through, he was now pretending to be my protector. The audacity of it made my blood boil. Later, after the cheesy awards had been handed out, and the CEO had given a rambling, uninspired speech, a live band started to play. The dance floor filled with tipsy accountants and marketing execs letting loose. I wanted no part of it. I slipped out of the ballroom and onto the now familiar terrace. Seeking refuge in the cool night air, I was standing by the railing, staring out at the dark, sleeping vineyards, when David appeared beside me. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay? You've been quiet all night." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a small smile. "Just tired. Ready to go home." "Me too," he said. He leaned against the railing next to me, our shoulders almost touching. "Listen, about what happened at the pool today. I'm sorry if I put you in an awkward position. I didn't realize." "Well, I didn't realize Mr. Sterling was so territorial." "He's not," I said, a little too quickly. "He's just my boss. He's a jerk, that's all." David looked at me, his expression gentle and knowing. "Autumn," he said, his voice quiet. "I may work in IT, but I'm not clueless. There's something going on between you two, and whatever it is, it's intense. I just hope you know what you're doing." "There's nothing going on," I insisted, my voice tight. We got off on the wrong foot. That's all." He just nodded, but he didn't look convinced. We stood in a comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the distant lights of a car move slowly along a country road. "The offer for coffee still stands, by the way," he said, finally breaking the silence. "Whenever you're ready, no pressure." I looked at him, at his kind, open face, and felt a wave of guilt wash over me. He was a good man. He was offering me something simple and honest and real, and I couldn't accept it. Not now. Not while my head and my heart were still in such a state of turmoil. "Thank you, David," I said, my voice soft. I'll think about it." He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "That's all I can ask for." The next morning, we were all herded back onto the bus for the long ride home. The mood was subdued, a mixture of exhaustion and the dread of returning to the daily grind. I found a seat in the back, put on my headphones, and pretended to be asleep, a universal sign for do not disturb. I must have actually drifted off, because the next thing I knew, someone was gently shaking my shoulder. I opened my eyes to see Stephen standing in the aisle, his expression unreadable. "We're here," he said, his voice a low rumble. I looked out the window and saw the familiar, ugly facade of our office building. We were back. The retreat was over. I gathered my things and shuffled off the bus with the rest of the corporate zombies. I was heading towards the parking garage, eager to get to my car and just go home, when Stephen fell into step beside me. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I think we've said everything that needs to be said," I replied, not breaking my stride. "No, we haven't," he insisted. He reached out and gently took my arm, stopping me. "Please, Autumn, just 5 minutes." We were standing in a relatively deserted corner of the parking garage, the air thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and concrete. I looked at him, at the genuine plea in his eyes, and against my better judgment, I sighed and nodded. "Fine," I said. 5 minutes. He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for something difficult. "Look," he said, his voice earnest. "I know I've been an asshole. The way I treated you, the things I said. There's no excuse. I was out of line. And I'm sorry." The apology was so unexpected. It completely disarmed me. I stared at him, speechless. "And yesterday," he continued, "at the pool, I had no right. My behavior was inexcusable. It's not my place to tell you who you can and can't see. I was jealous." The word hung in the air between us, a raw, honest confession that changed everything. "Jealous?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Why?" He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, a crack in the armor of his cool, controlled facade. "Because," he said, his voice a low, rough murmur, "because I think I'm falling in love with you." The world seemed to stop spinning, the distant sounds of traffic, the hum of the garage lights, the frantic beating of my own heart. It all faded into a dull, muffled roar. All I could see was his face, his eyes searching mine, waiting for a response that I was incapable of giving. Love. The word felt foreign, alien. It was a word that belonged to a different person, a different lifetime. It was a word I had buried with Ethan. "I know it's crazy," he said, as if reading my mind. "I know the timing is insane, and the circumstances are complicated, but I can't help it. From the moment I realized who you were, from the moment I remembered that fierce, brave little girl on the playground, I haven't been able to get you out of my head." He took a step closer, his hands finding mine, his fingers lacing through my own. His touch was warm, solid, and terrifyingly real. "I know I don't deserve it," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "but I'm asking you to give me a chance, a real chance. Let me show you that I'm not the arrogant prick you think I am. Let me try to make you happy." I just stared at him, my mind a blank, roaring static. He was saying all the things I had once dreamed of hearing, but they were coming from the wrong person, at the wrong time. I was a mess of grief and confusion, and he was my boss, the man who had humiliated me, who had made my life a living hell for the past month, and yet, standing here, in this ugly, soulless parking garage, holding his hands, looking into his eyes, I felt something, a tiny, fragile flicker of hope in the barren, empty landscape of my heart. It was terrifying, and it was the first real thing I had felt in 5 long years. The 5 minutes he'd asked for stretched into an eternity. We just stood there, hands clasped, in the gray, concrete silence of the parking garage. My mind was a battlefield, warring factions of past and present, fear and a terrifying, nascent hope, locked in a brutal, bloody conflict. Love. He'd used the word love. It was a language I no longer spoke, a country from which I had been exiled 5 years ago. And yet, the way he said it, the raw vulnerability in his eyes, it felt like a homecoming. Finally, I pulled my hands from his, the loss of his warmth an immediate physical ache. I can't, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. It's too much, too soon. The light in his eyes flickered, but he didn't look away. I know, he said softly. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just asking you not to shut the door completely. Just think about it. That's all. I couldn't promise him that. I couldn't promise him anything. I just gave him a single, jerky nod, then turned and walked away, my legs unsteady, my whole body trembling. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The days that followed were a strange, surreal dance. Stephen, true to his word, gave me space. But it was a charged, watchful space. The dynamic between us had shifted again. He was no longer just my boss. He was the man who had laid his heart at my feet in a parking garage, and I was the woman who had left it there. He was different. The arrogant, demanding boss was gone, replaced by a man who was quiet, patient, and almost gentle. He'd leave a coffee on my desk in the morning when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd defend my department in meetings with a fierce, unwavering loyalty. He'd send me anonymous, encouraging messages through our Facebook chat, messages that I now knew were from him, his words a secret lifeline in the turbulent waters of my confusion. You looked tired today. Make sure you're getting enough rest. Great job on the quarterly report. You're a rock star. Saw a funny dog on the way to work. Thought of you. Each message was a small, gentle tap on the stone wall I had built around my heart, and with each tap, a tiny hairline crack appeared. One evening, about a week after the retreat, I was working late, trying to reconcile a particularly stubborn spreadsheet. The office was quiet, the only sounds the hum of the computers and the distant wail of a siren. I was rubbing my temples, a tension headache pounding behind my eyes, when he appeared at the entrance to my cubicle. He didn't say anything. He just placed a container of takeout soup and a bottle of water on my desk. You need to eat, he said, his voice a low, soft rumble. You don't have to do this, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I know, he said. I want to. He pulled up a chair and just sat with me while I ate, not talking, not pressuring me, just being there. And in that quiet, shared moment, surrounded by the sterile, impersonal beige of our office, something shifted. The last of my anger, the last of my resentment, it just melted away, replaced by a feeling so warm and so terrifyingly real that it took my breath away. I was falling for him. It was insane. It was illogical. It was everything I had sworn I would never do again. But it was happening. After that night, things began to change. Slowly, tentatively, we started talking. Real conversations, not just about work, but about our lives, our hopes, our fears. He told me about his lonely childhood, about the pressure of living up to his father's expectations. I, in turn, told him about Ethan. I told him about the accident, about the 5 years of grief-stricken numbness, about the guilt I still carried, the irrational feeling that I had somehow failed him by continuing to live when he could not. He listened, his expression gentle and patient, his eyes never leaving my face. He didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. He just listened, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt like someone truly saw me. Not the sad, broken woman who had lost her fiancé, but just me, Autumn. Our friendship, if you could call it that, blossomed in the stolen moments of our workday, shared lunches in the park, late-night conversations over spreadsheets, quiet walks to the subway station. It was a fragile, secret thing, a green shoot pushing its way up through the cracks in the concrete of our corporate world. One Friday night, he asked me to dinner, a real date, not just takeout soup in a cubicle. "I know a great little Italian place downtown," he said, his voice carefully casual, but I could see the nervous tension in his shoulders. "No pressure. If you're not ready, just say the word." I looked at him, at this man who had, against all odds, managed to break through my defenses and find the broken, beating heart I had thought was long dead. And I knew, with a sudden, startling clarity, that I was tired of being afraid. "I'd love that," I said, and the smile that lit up his face was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. The date was perfect. The restaurant was cozy and romantic, the food was incredible, and the conversation was easy and natural. We talked for hours, laughing more than I had laughed in years. He was funny and charming and intelligent, and a million other things I had never allowed myself to see. At the end of the night, he walked me to my door. The air between us was thick with unspoken possibilities. "I had a really good time tonight, Autumn," he said, his voice a low, soft murmur. "Me too," I whispered. He leaned in, his hand coming up to gently cup my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. My heart was pounding, a wild, frantic drum solo against my ribs. This was it, the moment I had been both dreading and longing for. He kissed me. It wasn't a demanding, passionate kiss. It was a soft, tentative exploration, a question and an answer all in one. It was a kiss that tasted of red wine and promises, of second chances and new beginnings. And in that moment, standing in the dingy, poorly lit hallway of my apartment building, I knew, with a terrifying, exhilarating certainty, that I was lost. I had spent 5 years in the dark, and Stephen Sterling, the man I had once hated, the man who had seen the worst of me and had somehow, inexplicably, fallen in love with me anyway. He was the light, and I was walking towards it, my eyes wide open, ready to be blinded. Our relationship was a whirlwind. We fell fast and hard, like we were making up for lost time. The secret glances at the office, the stolen kisses in the elevator, the clandestine weekend trips. It was intoxicating, a fever dream of love and laughter, and a passion so intense it felt like it could burn down the city. For the first time in 5 years, I was happy, genuinely, deliriously happy. Chloe was thrilled. "I told you so," she'd said, a smug, triumphant grin on her face. "I knew there was something going on with you and the hot boss. Even my parents, after their initial shock at my dating a younger man. But he's your boss, Autumn, and he's practically a baby." Eventually came around, won over by Stephen's charm and his obvious, unwavering devotion to me. Life was good. It was better than good. It was perfect. And then, one Tuesday morning, about 2 months into our secret, blissful romance, I woke up feeling off. A wave of nausea washed over me as I was brushing my teeth, so intense that I had to grip the sides of the sink to keep from fainting. I chalked it up to a bad piece of fish from the night before, took a couple of antacids, and went to work. But the nausea didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. The smell of the coffee in the break room sent me running for the bathroom. The sight of my coworker's tuna sandwich made my stomach churn. I was exhausted, my body feeling heavy and foreign. And then, with a dawning horror that was so cold and so absolute, that it felt like my blood had turned to ice water. I realized my period was late, 2 weeks late. No, it couldn't be. It was impossible. I had taken the pill, that horrible, bitter pill in the office bathroom. It was supposed to be a guarantee, a foolproof plan, but as I sat there in my cubicle, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a single terrifying thought echoed in the sudden, roaring silence of my mind. Sometimes, even foolproof plans fail. The world narrowed to the 4 walls of my bathroom stall at work. The air was stale, thick with the smell of industrial-strength air freshener. It was a cold, anonymous place for a life to completely unravel. I spent my lunch break at a pharmacy, 3 blocks away, my movements stiff and robotic. I bought the most expensive pregnancy test they had, as if the price tag could somehow alter the result. I hid the box at the bottom of my purse like it was a kilo of cocaine. Back in the office bathroom, I locked the door, my hands shaking so violently I could barely tear open the plastic wrapper. The instructions on the little paper insert might as well have been written in ancient Greek. I fumbled through the steps, my heart a frantic, panicked drum against my ribs. Then came the waiting, the longest 3 minutes of my life. I stared at the little plastic stick on the edge of the sink, watching the small window, my breath held tight in my chest. I prayed. To who? I don't know. To God, to the universe, to Ethan. Please, please no. And then a faint pink line appeared, and another right beside it, unmistakable, unforgiving, final. The word was a scream in the silent bathroom. Pregnant. My legs gave out, and I slid down the cool tile of the wall to the floor, the test clutched in my hand like a verdict. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. The pill. I took the pill. I remembered the bitter taste, the feeling of finality as I swallowed it. It was supposed to have erased the mistake, wiped the slate clean. But slates, apparently, don't wipe clean so easily. All I could hear was his voice from that day in his office, cold and cruel and dripping with contempt. I have no interest in having a bastard child running around. He would hate me. He would think I had done this on purpose, that this was all some elaborate, twisted scheme to trap him. Our new, fragile, beautiful relationship. It was a house of cards. And this was the wrecking ball. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog of pure terror. I stared blankly at my computer screen, the numbers and words blurring into a meaningless soup. Every time I heard his voice down the hall, every time I saw his shadow pass my cubicle, my stomach would clench with a fear so intense it was nauseating. How could I tell him? How could I look at the man who had just begun to trust me, to love me, and tell him that our future was now irrevocably tied to the ugliest moment of our past? I managed to make it through the day, but by the time I got home, I was a wreck. Chloe was out, for which I was grateful. I couldn't face her cheerful, perceptive questions. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. I collapsed into bed, but sleep was impossible. My mind was a carousel of horrors, spinning faster and faster. My parents' disappointed faces, the whispers at the office, Stephen's anger, his rejection. The next morning, the physical reality of my situation hit me with the force of a tidal wave. I woke up so nauseous I could barely lift my head from the pillow. The world was spinning. My body felt heavy and alien. I knew I couldn't go to work. I couldn't face him. Not today. I called my supervisor and left a weak, croaking message, claiming I had the stomach flu. Then I crawled back under the covers and surrendered to the misery. Sometime around mid-morning, the doorbell rang. I ignored it. It was probably just a package delivery. But then it rang again, a long, insistent buzz, followed by a knock. "Autumn, are you in there?" "It's Stephen." My blood ran cold. "Stephen, What was he doing here? How did he even know where I lived? The knocking grew more insistent. Autumn, I know you're in there. Your supervisor told me you called in sick. I was worried. Please just open the door. His voice. It wasn't angry. It was filled with a genuine, palpable concern. It was the voice of the man who had held my hand in the park, not the man who had offered me a pill. I couldn't let him see me like this. I couldn't face him. But he wasn't going away. With a groan, I dragged myself out of bed. My head was spinning, and black spots danced in front of my eyes. I grabbed my robe, tying it tightly around my waist, and stumbled to the door. I opened it just a crack. He was standing there, his face etched with worry. He was holding a paper bag that smelled of chicken soup. I'm fine, I said, my voice a weak rasp. You didn't have to come. You sound terrible, he said, his eyes scanning my face. Let me in. Let me take care of you. No, really, I'm okay. I think I'm contagious. You should go. I tried to close the door, but the effort was too much. The world tilted sideways. The hallway dissolved into a swirling vortex of black and gray. The last thing I heard, before the darkness swallowed me completely, was his voice, sharp with panic. Autumn. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the smell. That clean, antiseptic smell of hospitals. The second thing I noticed was the soft, rhythmic beeping of a machine somewhere beside me. I slowly opened my eyes. The ceiling was white, acoustic tile. I was in a bed with crisp, starchy sheets, and an IV tube was taped to the back of my hand. I was in a hospital. A wave of pure, unadulterated terror washed over me. The baby. Had something happened? I put my free hand on my stomach, a desperate, protective gesture. Then I saw him. Stephen was sitting in a chair by the window, his head in his hands, his shoulders slumped. He looked wrecked. Stephen. My voice was a dry croak. His head snapped up. He was on his feet in an instant, rushing to my bedside, his face a mixture of relief and something else. Something I couldn't read. Autumn, you're awake. Thank God. You scared the hell out of me. What happened? I whispered. The baby. Is the baby okay? He froze, his expression shifting. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. You knew? He asked, his voice barely audible. Knew what? I asked, my heart pounding. What's going on? Why am I here? He took a deep breath, running a shaky hand through his hair. You fainted at your apartment. I called 911. They brought you here. The doctor said you were severely dehydrated and exhausted. He paused, his gaze dropping to my hand on my stomach. And then, he told me. I stared at him, my mind refusing to process his words. Told you what? He told me that you're pregnant, he said, the words heavy and final. He said, you're about 2 months along. The room was silent, save for the steady, relentless beeping of the heart monitor. I felt like I was outside my own body, watching this scene unfold from a great distance. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. My first thought was a flash of pure primal fear. He had brought me here, to this hospital. Was this a trap? Was he going to make me? I won't do it, I said, my voice suddenly strong, fierce. I don't care what you say. I'm keeping this baby. He looked at me, his expression a mask of confusion. Do what? Autumn, what are you talking about? This is why you brought me here, isn't it? I accused, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. To get rid of it? Because you have no interest in a bastard child? I threw his own cruel words back at him like a weapon. The color drained from his face. He looked like I had physically struck him. No, he whispered, shaking his head. God, no. Autumn, I would could never. That was before everything. I didn't mean it. He sank into the chair by the bed, his face pale with shock. I can't believe. After all this time, you still think that's who I am. A nurse came in then, a cheerful, bustling woman who seemed oblivious to the emotional atom bomb that had just gone off in the room. She checked my vitals, adjusted my IV drip, and gave me a bright, professional smile. "Well, everything looks good," she said, making a note on my chart. "You just gave your husband here quite a scare." She winked at Stephen. "You need to take better care of yourself, Mama. And you," she said, wagging a playful finger at Stephen, "need to make sure she's eating properly and not overdoing it. You've got a precious cargo on board now." She bustled out of the room, leaving a stunned, echoing silence in her wake. Husband, Mama. The words hung in the air, foreign and terrifying and shockingly real. Stephen was the first to speak. He looked up from the floor, his eyes meeting mine. The confusion and hurt were gone, replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. "She's right," he said, his voice low and firm. "This changes everything." He took a deep breath. "Autumn, we need to get married." Married? The word came out as a strangled squeak. My mind, already reeling from the shock of the pregnancy and the hospital visit, simply couldn't process this new, seismic piece of information. "Married? Are you insane?" "No," he said, his voice calm and steady, a stark contrast to the chaotic whirlwind in my head. He leaned forward, taking my hand, his grip warm and surprisingly grounding. "I'm being practical and responsible. This baby deserves a family. It deserves a father. It deserves to have my name." I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. "But we've only been dating for a couple of months. We can't get married. People don't just get married because of a baby." "Some people do," he said, his gaze unwavering. "And besides, this isn't just about the baby. This is about us." He squeezed my hand, his thumb stroking the back of my knuckles. "I told you I was falling in love with you, Autumn. I meant it. The baby. It doesn't change that. It just accelerates things." I pulled my hand away, a fresh wave of panic washing over me. No, I can't. This is all happening too fast. I need time to think." "What is there to think about?" he asked, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "We love each other. We're having a child. The logical next step is marriage." "Love?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter and foreign in my mouth. "You call this love? Forcing me into a marriage I'm not ready for? Is this about love, Stephen, or is this about responsibility, about duty, about making sure your bastard child isn't running around?" The hurt that flashed across his face was so raw, so genuine, that it was like a physical blow. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me, his shoulders rigid with a tension I could feel from across the room. "That's not fair," he said, his voice low and tight. "And you know it." He turned back to face me, and his eyes were dark with a pain that mirrored my own. "Yes, this is about responsibility. I'm not going to be the kind of man who walks away from his child. But to suggest that's the only reason, after everything we've shared these past few months, that's cruel." He was right. It was cruel. I was scared, and I was lashing out, using his past mistakes as a weapon to protect myself from this terrifying, overwhelming new reality. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely audible. I'm scared." "I know," he said, his voice softening. He walked back to the bed and sat down on the edge, taking my hand again. "I'm scared too, but we're in this together, you and me, And the baby. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Just don't shut me out. Let me be here for you. Let me take care of you. Please. I looked at him, at this man who was, in the space of a single afternoon, attempting to become my partner, my protector, the father of my child. It was too much. It was everything. Okay, I whispered. The single word, a surrender and a promise, all in one. Okay. The next few days were a blur. Stephen took charge with a quiet, efficient determination that was both overwhelming and strangely comforting. He handled my discharge from the hospital, filled my prescriptions, and insisted on driving me back to my apartment. He wouldn't let me go home alone. You need someone to look after you, he'd said, his tone leaving no room for argument. And that someone is going to be me. He practically moved into my tiny one-bedroom apartment. He cooked for me, bland, nausea-friendly foods that he researched on the internet. He fluffed my pillows and made sure I was drinking enough water. He took time off work, rescheduling meetings and delegating tasks. His entire focus narrowed to the single, all-important mission of my well-being. It was nice. It was suffocating. It was wonderful. It was terrifying. My body felt like it had been hijacked by a tiny, invisible alien. I was in a constant state of exhaustion, plagued by a nausea that ebbed and flowed like a toxic tide. The smells of my own apartment, once familiar and comforting, were now a minefield of potential triggers. Chloe's lavender laundry detergent, the coffee brewing in the kitchen, the faint scent of her perfume. They all sent me running for the bathroom. Through it all, Stephen was a rock. He was patient and kind and endlessly supportive. He held my hair back when I was sick, rubbed my back when I was crying, and never once complained. He was, in short, the perfect expectant father, and it was driving me insane. I felt like I was losing myself. My identity as Autumn Pham, competent accountant, grieving fiancé, independent woman, it was all being erased, replaced by this new, fragile, terrifying role, mother-to-be. And Stephen, in his well-intentioned, overbearing way, was an accomplice to the crime. One afternoon, about a week after I'd been discharged from the hospital, I finally snapped. He had just presented me with a bowl of plain, boiled rice, a proud, hopeful look on his face. I read that ginger can help with the nausea, he said, so I grated a little on top. I stared at the sad, steaming bowl of white mush, and something inside me just broke. I can't do this, I said, my voice trembling. You don't like it? He asked, his face falling. I can make you something else. Toast? Crackers? No, I said, shaking my head, a single, hot tear rolling down my cheek. I mean, this, all of this, you being here, hovering over me, treating me like I'm some kind of precious, delicate incubator. I appreciate it, Stephen. I really do. But I'm going crazy. I need to breathe. I need to feel like myself again. He stood there for a long moment, the bowl of rice still in his hands, a look of hurt and confusion on his face. Then he slowly nodded, a sad, dawning understanding in his eyes. Okay, he said softly. I get it. I'm sorry. I was just trying to help. I know, I said, my voice thick with tears. But you're smothering me. He put the bowl down and came to sit beside me on the couch, pulling me into a gentle, comforting hug. I buried my face in his chest and just sobbed, all the fear and anxiety and confusion of the past week pouring out of me in a torrent of gasping, hiccuping tears. He just held me, stroking my hair, murmuring soft, soothing words until the storm finally passed. I love you, Autumn, he whispered into my hair, and I'm not going to let you go through this alone. But I'll try to back off, to give you some space. Just tell me what you need. Whatever it is, I'll do it. I looked up at him, my eyes red and puffy, my face a mess of tear tracks and snot. What I need, I said, my voice a watery, exhausted whisper, is to go home, to my parents. I have to tell them. He nodded, his expression serious. Okay, he said. When do you want to go? Now, I said. And so we went. He drove me to my parents' house, the same quiet, suburban street I had grown up on. The 2-hour drive was silent, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with a new, unspoken understanding. When we pulled up in front of the familiar 2-story colonial, I felt a fresh wave of panic. My parents were traditional. They had a plan for my life, a plan that involved a respectable, age-appropriate husband, a big church wedding, and then, and only then, a baby. This was not part of the plan. Do you want me to come in with you? Stephen asked, his voice quiet. I looked at him, at his strong, handsome face, and I knew, with a sudden, absolute certainty, that I couldn't do this alone. Yes, I said, my voice trembling. Please. He just nodded, squeezed my hand, and together we got out of the car and walked up the front path to face the firing squad. My mother opened the door, her face lighting up with a surprised smile. Autumn, what a wonderful surprise. I wasn't expecting you. Her eyes then flickered to Stephen, standing just behind me, and her smile faltered slightly, replaced by a look of polite confusion. And you've brought a friend. Mom, this is Stephen, I said, my voice sounding strangely high-pitched to my own ears. Stephen, this is my mother, Helen. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Pham, Stephen said, extending his hand. His voice was calm and steady, a stark contrast to the frantic hummingbird that was my heart. My mother took his hand, her eyes doing a quick, practiced appraisal. I could see the questions forming in her mind. Who is this handsome young man? Why is he with my perpetually single, grieving daughter on a random Tuesday afternoon? Please, come in, she said, her hostess instincts kicking in. Your father is in the study. David, look who's here. My dad appeared in the hallway, a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose. He was a quiet, stoic man, and his reaction was a mirror of my mother's. Initial surprise, followed by a wary curiosity. We all shuffled into the living room, the same formal, rarely used space that I had spent my entire childhood avoiding. It was a museum of my parents' aspirations, filled with stiff, uncomfortable furniture and faded family photos in ornate silver frames. The air was thick with the scent of lemon polish and unspoken expectations. We sat down, me and Stephen, on the floral sofa, my parents opposite us in 2 matching wingback chairs. The silence was excruciating. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, heavy and charged with electricity. Finally, my mother, unable to bear the suspense any longer, broke the silence. So, Stephen, she said, her voice a little too bright, what is it that you do? I'm the new director of finance at Autumn's firm, he said, his voice calm and professional. My parents exchanged a look. I could practically hear their thoughts. Her boss, the younger one she complained about? Oh, dear, I see, my father said, his voice a low, non-committal rumble. Another silence fell. This was it. There was no easy way to do this, no gentle lead-in. I just had to rip off the Band-Aid. I took a deep, shaky breath and looked at my parents. Mom, Dad, I said, my voice trembling slightly. There's a reason we're here. We have something to tell you." I felt Stephen's hand find mine under the guise of the sofa cushions, his fingers lacing through my own, a silent, steadying presence. "Stephen and I, we're getting married." The words hung in the air, a shocking, impossible declaration. My mother's carefully constructed smile froze on her face. My father's eyebrows disappeared into his hairline. "Married?" my mother repeated, her voice a faint, disbelieving whisper. But you've only just met, and he's your boss." "We know it's sudden," Stephen said, his voice firm and confident, taking the lead. "But we're very much in love, and we want to spend the rest of our lives together." "In love?" my father scoffed, finding his voice. "You're a child, son. What do you know about love?" "And Autumn, after everything with Ethan, I thought you were more sensible than this." "Dad, please," I said, my voice pleading. "This has nothing to do with Ethan, doesn't it?" he challenged, his eyes hard. "You've been in a fog for 5 years, and now, suddenly, you're getting married to a man you barely know, a man who's years younger than you. It doesn't make any sense." This was it, the moment of truth, the part of the story that would either shatter our family into a million pieces or, by some miracle, bring us closer together. "There's more," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I looked at Stephen, and he gave me a small, encouraging nod. I turned back to my parents, my eyes filling with tears. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a deafening, crushing silence, so profound that I could hear the frantic, terrified thumping of my own blood in my ears. My mother's face had gone completely white, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and horror. My father just stared at me, his face a mask of stone, his expression unreadable. He was the first to speak. His voice was quiet, but it was laced with a cold, hard anger that was more terrifying than any shout. "Get out," he said. "David," my mother whispered, her voice a shocked plea. I said, "Get out," he repeated, his voice rising, his eyes still locked on me. "Both of you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. You have brought shame on this family, Autumn. Shame." "Dad, please," I sobbed, the tears now streaming down my face. "Don't do this. Go," he said, standing up, his voice a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. "And don't come back." Stephen was on his feet in an instant, pulling me up, his arm a protective shield around my shaking shoulders. "Come on, Autumn," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We're leaving." He led me out of the house, my own sobs echoing in the sudden, terrible silence behind us. We got back into the car, and the moment the doors were closed, I completely fell apart. I buried my face in my hands and wept, a storm of grief and shame and rejection so profound that it felt like it was tearing me in two. Stephen didn't say anything. He just pulled me into his arms, holding me tight as my body was racked with convulsive, gut-wrenching sobs. He held me until the tears finally subsided, until I was just a shivering, exhausted mess in his arms. "It's going to be okay," he whispered into my hair, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "I promise, we're going to be okay. You, me, and the baby. We're a family now, and I will never, ever let you down." And in that moment, in the dark, safe cocoon of his car, with the wreckage of my old life still smoldering in the rearview mirror, I knew, with a certainty that was as terrifying as it was absolute, that he was right. We were a family, and for the first time since I had seen those 2 pink lines, I didn't feel completely, utterly alone. In the weeks that followed, Stephen was true to his word. He was my rock, my anchor in the storm. We found a small, charming apartment together, closer to the office. He went with me to my first doctor's appointment, his face a mask of awe and wonder as we heard the faint, rapid thumping of our baby's heartbeat for the first time. He also insisted on meeting his own parents. "They need to know," he'd said. "They're your family now too." I was terrified. If my own parents had reacted so badly, what would his be like? But Stephen's parents were a revelation. They were warm and kind and ridiculously excited about the prospect of becoming grandparents. They welcomed me into their family with open arms, no questions asked. Their unconditional love and support a healing balm on the raw, open wound of my own parents' rejection. His cousin, Olivia, the woman from the retreat, turned out to be exactly what he'd said. His cousin, a slightly spoiled, overly dramatic but ultimately harmless girl who had grown up with Stephen like a sister and was fiercely protective of him. Once she realized that I wasn't some corporate gold digger and that I genuinely made her cousin happy, she did a complete 180, embracing me as her new best friend and insisting on planning my baby shower. Life began to find a new, strange, and wonderful rhythm. We were building a life together, a life I had never expected, a life born from a mistake, but a life that was, against all odds, filled with a quiet, profound, and deeply healing love. My own parents remained a painful, silent void in my new reality. I called a few times, but my father always hung up, and my mother would just whisper a tearful, "I can't talk right now," before the line went dead. The rejection was a constant, dull ache in my heart, a ghost at the feast of my newfound happiness. One evening, I was sitting on the couch in our new apartment, flipping through a baby name book, when my phone rang. It was David, my friend from the office. I hadn't seen much of him since the news of my situation had become the subject of office gossip. "Hey, David," I said, a little surprised to hear from him. "Hey, Autumn," he said, his voice warm and friendly as always. I heard the news. "Congratulations. I'm really happy for you." "Thank you," I said, my voice soft. That means a lot. I wanted to call and see how you were doing. And Mia, she misses you. She keeps asking when Auntie Autumn is going to come over for a play date." The mention of the sweet little girl made my heart ache. "I miss her too," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "Things have just been a little crazy lately." "I get it," he said, "but the offer's still open for coffee or a play date. Whenever you're ready." We chatted for a few more minutes, a comfortable, easy conversation that felt like a lifeline to my old, simpler life. As I hung up the phone, I felt a pang of sadness for the easy, uncomplicated friendship we had lost. Stephen came into the room then, a concerned look on his face. "Who was that?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Just David," I said, calling to say congratulations. He nodded, but I could see a flicker of the old jealousy, the old possessiveness, in his eyes. "He's a good man, Stephen," I said softly, reaching out to take his hand. "He's my friend, that's all." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and then he nodded, the tension in his shoulders visibly relaxing. "I know," he said, lifting my hand to his lips and kissing my knuckles. "I'm sorry. I trust you. It's just the thought of losing you." "You're not going to lose me," I said, my voice firm. I put my hand on my now slightly rounded belly. "You're stuck with us for the long haul." A slow, brilliant smile spread across his face, transforming his handsome features into something breathtakingly beautiful. "Good," he said, his voice a low, happy rumble, "because I'm not going anywhere." Life settled into a rhythm that was both mundane and miraculous. The morning sickness, thankfully, began to fade, replaced by a ravenous, often bizarre, hunger. One night, at 2 a.m., I woke Stephen up with an urgent, non-negotiable craving for pickles and vanilla ice cream. He didn't even complain. He just got dressed, kissed my forehead, and drove to a 24-hour convenience store, returning half an hour later with a triumphant grin and the spoils of his late-night quest. Watching him, bleary-eyed and rumpled, dutifully scooping ice cream into a bowl for me, my heart swelled with a love so fierce and so profound it almost hurt to breathe. He was going to be an incredible father. I saw it in the way he talked to my belly, his voice a low, soothing rumble as he told the baby about his day. I saw it in the way he obsessively researched car seats and strollers, creating color-coded spreadsheets to compare safety ratings and consumer reviews. I saw it in the way his eyes would mist over whenever we talked about the future, about taking our son or daughter to the park, about teaching them to ride a bike. Our wedding was a simple, quiet affair at a local courthouse, with just his parents and a beaming Olivia as witnesses. I wore a simple, cream-colored dress that skimmed gently over my growing bump. Stephen wore a dark suit, his eyes never leaving my face, his expression a mixture of awe and love, and a happiness so pure it was almost blinding. As we exchanged our vows, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't control, I thought of Ethan. For so long, the thought of marrying anyone else had felt like a betrayal. But now, as I looked at Stephen, at the man who had seen the worst of me, who had weathered my storms and healed my broken heart, I knew that this wasn't a betrayal. It was a new beginning, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that Ethan would have wanted this for me. He would have wanted me to be happy. The months flew by in a blur of doctor's appointments, nursery decorating, and the quiet, domestic bliss of building a life together. We were a team, Stephen and I, navigating the strange, wonderful, terrifying world of impending parenthood. We were happy, but there was still a shadow, a piece of my heart that remained stubbornly, painfully broken. My parents, they still refused to speak to me. My mother would sometimes answer my calls, her voice a hushed, tearful whisper, but the conversations were always short, cut off by my father's angry voice in the background. The rift between us felt like a vast, unbridgeable chasm. Then, one morning, a few weeks before my due date, Stephen woke me up with a kiss and a mischievous grin. "What are you smiling about?" I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. "I have a surprise for you," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Get dressed and wear something comfortable." "A surprise?" "Stephen, I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm the size of a small whale. My idea of a surprise is a new pillow that doesn't make my back hurt. Trust me," he said, his smile widening. "You're going to like this one." He drove me to our old office building, a place I hadn't set foot in since I had officially started my maternity leave. "What are we doing here?" I asked, my brow furrowed in confusion. "You'll see," he said, leading me through the lobby and into the elevator. But he didn't press the button for the 14th floor, the home of the accounting department. He pressed the button for the top floor, the executive conference center. When the doors opened, he took my hand and led me into the main conference room, and my breath caught in my throat. The room, usually a sterile, impersonal space of polished mahogany and black leather, had been transformed. Balloons and streamers hung from the ceiling. A huge banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Autumn," was stretched across one wall, and standing in the middle of the room, around a table laden with a massive cake and a mountain of presents, were all of my friends from the office, Sarah, and the girls from accounting, and even David, holding a smiling, gap-toothed Mia by the hand. They all erupted into a chorus of surprise. I stood there, stunned, my hand flying to my mouth, tears instantly springing to my eyes. You did all this? I whispered, looking at Stephen, my heart so full it felt like it was going to burst. I had some help, he said, gesturing to the assembled crowd. Happy birthday, Autumn, David said, giving me a warm, friendly hug. We miss you at the office. Happy birthday, Auntie Autumn, Mia chirped, handing me a clumsily wrapped present. Everyone crowded around me then, hugging me, congratulating me, wishing me a happy birthday. I had completely forgotten. In the fog of pregnancy and family drama, my own 30th birthday had completely slipped my mind. But Stephen had remembered. After I had cut the cake and opened my presents, Stephen clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming, he said, his voice ringing with a happiness that was contagious. It means the world to us to have you all here to celebrate with us. But there's one more surprise. He turned to me, his expression suddenly serious, his eyes dark and intense. Autumn, he said, his voice a low, emotional murmur. The first time I saw you, you were a fierce, brave little girl with a scraped knee and a heart bigger than the whole playground. And I think, even then, a part of me knew that I was going to love you for the rest of my life. He took a deep breath, and then, in front of all of our friends and colleagues, he dropped to one knee. He pulled a small, black velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside, a simple, elegant diamond glittered on a bed of white satin, catching the light and throwing 1,000 tiny rainbows around the room. A collective gasp went through the crowd. I just stared at him, my vision blurring with a fresh wave of tears, my hand pressed against my heart. I know we're already married, he said, his voice thick with an emotion that mirrored my own. I know we did things a little out of order, but I want to do this right. I want the whole world to know how much I love you. He looked up at me, his eyes shining, his face the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Autumn fam, he said, his voice ringing with a clear, unwavering certainty. You are my best friend, my partner, my hero, and the mother of my child. Will you do me the honor of continuing to be my wife for the rest of our lives? The room was silent, every eye on me. I looked at this incredible, impossible man kneeling at my feet, and I felt a wave of love so powerful, so absolute, that it was like a physical force knocking the air from my lungs and resetting the entire world. Yes, I whispered, the word a sob and a prayer and a promise all in one. Of course, yes. The room erupted in a chorus of cheers and applause as he slid the ring onto my finger. A perfect, glittering fit. He stood up, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me. A deep, passionate, life-affirming kiss. Right there in the middle of the executive conference room, in front of God and everyone. And in that moment, I knew, with a certainty that was as bright and as clear as the diamond on my finger, that I was home. The journey had been a chaotic, messy, and often painful one, but it had led me here, to this man, to this life, to this love. And as I stood there, wrapped in my husband's arms, with our child kicking gently inside me, surrounded by the warmth and love of our friends, I finally, truly understood. Sometimes, the most beautiful love stories don't start with a fairy tale. They start with a mistake. They start in the wreckage. They start with two broken people who, against all odds, find a way to make each other whole again. And that, I realized, was a love story worth telling. It was our love story, and it was just beginning.